Here comes the money. You're now listening to the Gambling with Gold podcast with Jason Gold. Presented by Champions Round.
What is going on? Welcome to Gambling with Gold, episode 86. My name is Jason Gold. As always, joined by my buddy from the Action Network, Dan Titus. Dan, how you doing this Wednesday?
What up, Jay? Doing great, man. We got it one day till the NBA draft comes. And as a Sixers fan, I wish I had more to really get excited about. I'm really banking on the fact that we can trade Tobias Harris and Matisse Thybulle for in the 23rd pick there. But a lot of exciting teams that have an opportunity to rebuild and get some good talent. So I'm more excited about the 23 draft, but this one's definitely going to have some good players in it, especially in the lottery.
What's the kid from France in the 23 draft that everybody's
Victor? I don't remember his last name, but he's just like Giannis meets, I don't know. He just looks like a freak, dude. Like 7'2", just super athletic, can play defense. Kind of looks like Chet, but like a grown man version of Chet.
The interesting part about that is it seems like there are teams that are potentially angling themselves to be involved in the 23 more than the 2 draft, including the team that's picking at number 2. Oklahoma City seems like, they don't really release any information from the building, but all reports around the league are that they are trying to go all in for him in the 23 draft, even though the best chance that they would have is only 14%. So create some interesting angles, and potentially if you think that maybe there's a crossover between Victor and Chet, maybe there's an interesting opportunity or two. I don't really know. So we'll get into all of that. I do want to, off the top, talk about what the Philadelphia 76ers are going to do. So you have Tobias Harris and you have Thybulle in 23. What do you think's out there right now? What have you heard out there about a potential trade that may happen there?
Yeah, the unfortunate thing is that I haven't heard much because I think that the league knows that Daryl Morey is scrambling to try to put pieces together to package a bad contract in Tobias Harris, which actually doesn't look as bad now, just given the amount of the salaries that have gone up with the collective bargaining agreements. But he's just not a player that, the winning teams want to covet and pay that money to. This is really about, can you find the right suitor that can take on that salary, absorb that, but then also has maybe a chance to be a playoff contending team. And I don't really know who fits that bill right now. I really like the Indiana Pacers. I think he'd be a good fit for them, but I don't know that they want to mortgage what they're rebuilding right now and their opportunity with the 6th pick in the draft right here to really get a guy that's a lot younger and costs a lot less. So haven't really heard much candidates in terms of like potential trade scenarios, but I think Matisse Thybulle in the 23rd pick is something that might be attractive to some of those lower end picks of contending teams that are looking for some defensive help that I think Matisse Thybulle as an all defensive team player could bring. And with the 23rd pick, it's not bad value there. So I could see potentially the Sixers probably trying to trade up maybe a few spots if there's someone that they like a lot, packaging Matisse Thybulle as part of that.
So if you have Thybulle and 23, how high do you think you can get up the draft board this year?
Maybe you can sneak into under 20s. I don't think it's going to be that significant. Like, it's certainly not going to get them into the lottery. Potentially maybe you could get as high as 16, maybe, but I don't think that they're going to. This might be something that drags on into the offseason, and they might have to find potential trade candidates after the draft happens, because Morey's already talked about wanting to offer PJ Tucker 3 years, $30 million. Where are you getting that money from when James Harden hasn't even signed yet? And he also said he's not taking a significant pay cut. So I don't know where the money's going to come from, but they're going to need to free up either by trading Tobias Harris in some form or fashion, or getting really creative with their cap, or just being willing to pay that luxury tax. That was pretty good for the Golden State Warriors this year.
Yep. Certainly. All right. Let's get into the NBA draft bets that we're looking at. We'll start off at number 1. Before we get to that, talk a little bit about Big Board Showdown that we have. You have until tomorrow to enter. Enter into any contest, and you can be entered to win a Luka Doncic jersey. All you have to do is DM us your screenshot of your league. So please come and do that. That Doncic jersey is sick and signed Blue Maverick. You can also play some paid versions of Big Board Showdown. Put as much as you want on the line. I think we have a couple of $20, a couple of $10 contests in there right now. It's a snake draft. So you can play with a maximum of 12 people. All you have to do is draft 6 NBA prospects, and you earn points based on where they're drafted in the real life NBA draft, very similar to our NFL draft product. So hop in there. We'd love it. We're also going to do a daily dozen tomorrow on the NBA draft that actually I'm going to surprise Dan and throw this up at the end of this podcast and see how many you're going to get right on this daily dozen. Tomorrow, we're recording that at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific tomorrow because your boys got to go to Seattle on an early flight.
I'm about to say 6 a.m. Pacific. What? We get a real job here, man. We work in startup life, man. 6 a.m. doesn't exist unless we actually got I don't know. I got kid duties to do, but you're actually working at 6 a.m. More power to you.
Man, I got a 9 a.m. flight to Seattle, so we're going to get that one off early tomorrow. All right.
Dedication.
Let's start off. Yes. Let's start off at the top. Orlando Magic have the number 1 pick. Now, this has gotten interesting because when this opened, Jabari Smith was the favorite, and then he increased to be a huge favorite. He got up to minus 500. Now, over the last...
like 3-4 weeks ago, it's like, do you believe in Jabari as a minus 400 favorite? And it's crazy how the scope has really changed.
So it got down yesterday where Jabari got down to like minus 160. I decided to bet that. I rebet it at minus 225 today. I do think there's a chance that, so the rumor was that Orlando had not made a decision and they were potentially wanting to draft Paolo. So Paolo's odds shot way the hell down. I think he got to like plus 150 at some point.
Yeah, he was 16. What was he like?
Plus 1600.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then he got all the way down to plus 160. So looking live right now, let's go over to BetMGM. Jabari Smith now back up to minus 300. DraftKings has him at minus 275 to be the first pick. Paolo plus 275 on each, and Chet plus 400 on each. So it seems like Chet probably out of the mix right now. Usually, if you have this sort of line movement against you at this point, you're probably out of the running, which I guess shouldn't be a huge surprise given the rotation that the Magic have right now. But do you think that Jabari at this point, given the fact that the lines have moved back towards him, he's a lock, or do you think that Paolo is potentially live here?
I don't know that I would consider anyone a lock right now out of those 3 options, but I would say that betting wise, I think the value, personally for me, the value is on Chet only because I think that he fits really well for what the Magic need, and similar as well as Jabari. I don't think Paolo Banchero as much just because he's not a defensive-minded guy yet. Now, surely he can build into that profile, but right now the Orlando Magic have a glaring need at the power forward position, and Jabari Smith, to me, kind of, if I had a player comp, I'd probably give him Michael Porter Jr., who also isn't a defensive stalwart by his own admission, but I think it's just his ability to shoot just gives you a game changer at that power forward stretch position, which, I think we saw like Evan Mobley last year took the league by storm as that stretch four that could also guard multiple positions. And I think Jabari Smith could ultimately do that. Same with Chet. The only problem that I have with Chet betting him is that he never worked out for the Orlando Magic. It seems like his team has been trying to get him to OKC as best that they can. And but I almost think that, he's a competitor too. So I think there's probably a chip on his shoulder that wants to go number 1, thinking that he is the best overall player. And, you're going to get more money for that anyway. So I think the value at plus 450 to me, given that I could see a 33% opportunity for pretty much any of these guys to go, I'd lean Jabari just because it started out heavy steam towards him going number 1. And then it kind of faded back down with the Paolo hype. And now it's gone back to Jabari. If I'm betting it right now, I'm definitely betting Jabari. Just because I think that if you look at the build of the Magic and what they need, I think he fits and slots in right now. Secondly, it would be Chet, and then third, Paolo.
All right, so Jabari Smith minus 275, maybe some value there, and then Chet plus 400, plus 450, depending on where you're looking at. Maybe a little sprinkled there. Nothing on Paolo. So number 2 pick. So Oklahoma City seems like on the surface, absolutely perfect fit, and we did talk about this probably a month ago, that the Chet, SGA, Giddey combo, given all the other picks that they have, is probably a really great nucleus. And I think that Chet obviously wants to go to Oklahoma City. It's the only team that he shared his medicals with. It's the only team that he's really worked out for. Yep. So Chet minus 250 right now to be the second pick in the draft. At some point, this had been much higher. There are rumors out there potentially that they may like Jaden Ivey and create one of the most athletic backcourts in the league with SGA and Ivy. I personally don't see that. Seems like to me that Chet is just an absolutely spectacular fit for what they want to do in Oklahoma City on both sides of the ball. And I do think that minus 250 is probably some decent value still. I think this should probably be closer to 400 or 500.
I think you're right. And, as much as I would love to see a Jaden Ivey who's drawn comparisons to John Morant, that would be a very explosive backcourt. But because they invested so much in the point guard position and the guard position over the last couple of seasons, I don't see them going that direction. And if you look at Chet, he really tracks to be like a Kristaps Porzingis type of guy, a dude that can run the floor. I mean, he has better handles than Kristaps probably ever will, but he can defend at the perimeter. He can close out on bigs and he can shoot the three. So the one thing that I think that the Oklahoma City Thunder have missed over the last several seasons is they've been playing this revolving door of center with Al Horford and now Derek Favors. They really haven't invested that much in the position besides Alec Pokusevski, who's too small to play like those heavy minutes. I think Chet is like the perfect fit for the Oklahoma City Thunder. It makes too much sense. And obviously the books agree at making him minus 250, stronger odds to go number 2 than Jabari is to go number 1. I think this one, and especially because the point that you made of them Chet's team sharing the medicals with Oklahoma City, I think he's pretty much just right in his path there.
All right, so we got Jabari 1, Chet 2. I know that we're staying, vanilla, but I think the last 2 days has really been just a lot of smoke screens and throwing things in the market.
Exactly.
But it seems like
right.
this is still Jabari, Chet, Paolo, and then figure it out. Speaking of which, the third pick, Paolo is minus 350 at DraftKings right now. Chet plus 600, Jabari plus 650, Jaden Ivey plus 900. Now, Ivy's been a little rumored here too. Again, could legitimately create the most athletic backcourt in the NBA with him and Jalen Green. However, this seems like all along this has been Paolo. He's the perfect fit. They got rid of Christian Wood in the trade to the Mavericks. Seems like Jalen Green and Paolo would work pretty well together. Obviously, they'd be an offensive force. Do you see that happening where Paolo, maybe we're getting some value at minus 350 versus he was at minus 500 2 days ago?
Yeah, I think that would be the value. I don't see it. It's only going to get worse, obviously, if Jabari and or Chet go off the board. I think the highest he could probably go is to Oklahoma City Thunder, but I still feel like Chet is the optimal landing spot there. And Banchero, as you stated, they traded Christian Wood. I think that opens up power forward minutes for Banchero right at the onset, because Alperen Sengun, the Houston Rockets last year's draft pick, didn't get enough minutes, but on a per 48, per 36 minute basis, this dude was a contributor, very high IQ player. And I think if you have him as the 5, slot in Banchero as the 4, you have a really exciting offensive scoring unit there with Kevin Porter Jr. running point guard, who can also give you a bucket, give you 50. Jalen Green, who won all rookie team very deservingly. So, I don't think that this team has a lot of holes in terms of a rebuilding franchise when you draft someone like Banchero, who could improve on the defensive end, but you already know you're getting a really good offensive player. And I saw some comps to like Ben Simmons just because he started out very small, kind of grew aggressively, has very good skills in terms of handling the ball because of that, and also has good vision in passing the ball. But it's like opposite ends of the spectrum. Simmons is good at defense, Pelo's good at offense. And I think that's one thing that Steven Silas is going to have to work on to his team as a whole, is getting them to play defense, because now Christian Wood didn't really play defense either that much. But now you really have all offensive guards and offensive-minded players that got to figure it out. But I think if you're starting a franchise over, this is what you want. You get a guy that has high pedigree, upside in Paolo. To me, the first 3 picks are pretty much decided. And then, as you stated, it gets interesting once we get to the Kings pick, because you never know what the Kings are going to do.
Absolutely. Back to Banchero for 1 second before we move on to the Kings. So the Ben Simmons comp is very interesting to me. Obviously, the offense-defense thing doesn't make a lot of sense. But
no,
the best thing that I had heard on Paolo is big body Carmelo Anthony coming out of Q's.
I like that better. Way better.
I when I heard that, I was like, oh, I totally get where this is coming from. I think he has the skill set. He is a dynamo offensively for being that young. And
yeah,
you saw him in the game against Texas Tech in the Sweet 16. Absolutely dominated the best defense in college basketball. So I would not be surprised to see him come in and have an immediate impact on offense. In fact, I think that he would probably be my pick for rookie of the year right now if he does end up in Houston.
Yeah, so I think landing spot, that's a great call. I mean, you'd probably get better value right now, not knowing where the destinations are going to be. But I think with the way he showed out at the end of the tournament there, or just in general, his tournament play, I think really put him on another echelon of this rookie class. And we talked about earlier is that this class doesn't have a ton of talent like deep throughout the entire draft. So, if you're looking at the top 5 players, like Banchero is certainly in that conversation. It's just be a concern of how much usage is he going to get with a bunch of ball dominant guards that shoot a lot already. And I think he'll find a way to make it work, but he's definitely going to be like probably the 3rd or 4th option scoring there in Houston if he lands there.
All right, so let's get to the 4th pick, the Sacramento Kings. We have no idea what they're going to do because it's the Sacramento Kings and they never make any sense anyways. The favorite right now is Jaden Ivey minus 155 to create a backcourt with De'Aaron Fox and Davion Mitchell. Also, Keegan Murray plus 115, Dyson Daniels plus 1,000, Shaedon Sharpe plus 1,300, Benedict Mathurin plus 1,500. Do you think that they go Ivy? Do you think this is a trade? Or do you think that potentially maybe Keegan Murray gets in here plus 115, given the fact that the Kings actually had Keegan Murray have dinner with De'Aaron Fox and see if there was going to be a fit there? I think also Sabonis was at that dinner too. I have no idea. It's the Kings, but I would probably, if I were doing anything, I would probably put a bet against Ivy being picked here. And it would either be a trade or maybe I'd take a shot at just something random like Dyson Daniels plus 1,000, Shaedon Sharpe plus 1,300, Mathurin plus 1,500, and just sprinkle a little on each.
We didn't really talk about this at length before the podcast, but I was going to say, like, I agree with fading Jaden Ivey here because Davion Mitchell, I think, played really well at the end of the season there, and enough that they were probably solid in practice. Like, hey, I think we can make Tyrese Halliburton expendable. Let's build him up as the possibly the combo guard to run with De'Aaron Fox. I'm really intrigued by Keegan Murray here because Harrison Barnes is eventually going to be traded, or his contract is going to expire here. So I think he slots in right now, at his height and size. I think he's a prototypical small forward, power forward in this league. And with his just all around ability, I think that would bode really well with Sabonis and his ability to not only be a passing big, but also like an unselfish passing big, but also looking for someone to take some of those reins on the creating on as well as De'Aaron Fox. So I think if they don't go guard, that would be a great choice for the Kings, but you can never tell. Like this could be a Jaden Ivey, definitely a good spot for him. And that's why he's the odds-on favorite right now. But yeah, I think Keegan Murray and some of the other intangible stuff that you were talking about, like him having dinners with, the prominent players of the franchise. Like, I feel like those things can't go understated in their significance and what they want to do to make this pick. Now, all that being said, I think this pick is going to be traded because there's other teams that are further below that really could jump up to grab Jaden Ivey or whoever else they want, like the Pacers. Malcolm Brogdon's on the block. Wouldn't be surprised if he was a chip to either the Pistons or the Sacramento Kings. I mean, I don't think maybe actually Miles Turner's probably more intriguing there, but either way, they have assets to trade. So what team might surprise out of the woodworks here to move up to 4? I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Kings played it conservative here and moved back, accumulated some more draft capital, and still got the player ultimately that they're okay with getting, which could be another guard. Like maybe it's Sharpe, maybe it's Dyson Daniels. We don't know. I just know that I have the feeling that Jaden Ivey is going to be a piece that they're going to probably dangle to try to get a little bit more draft capital and move back in this draft.
Interesting. I'm wondering what Indiana's package would be to move from 6 to 4 in order to get, I assume it would be for Jaden Ivey, which would make
probably have to be like a
expendable.
3-team trade because I feel like their assets aren't really anything that the Kings really need. So I don't know what other team they get involved there, but there's got to be a trade here. So I'm gonna bank on it being the number 4 pick, but if they keep it, I think that they're gonna do Keegan Murray here. So I like the value there. Keegan Murray, what was it, plus 115? I see plus 155 on FanDuel. So you could probably shop around to get that number, the right number for Keegan Murray. But I think he's probably the best fit out of the prospects that are available on the board.
So I went through the entire lottery and I picked out teams that I thought could make a trade. So I had 4 Kings, 6 Pacers.
Yeah.
And then Blazers, no. Pelicans, probably not. Spurs, probably not. Wizards, maybe. Knicks,
You don't think the
yes.
Spurs are possibly going to do it with rumors of DeJounte Murray possibly being available?
Ooh, I haven't heard that one. What's that rumor?
He was throwing up eye emojis on Twitter yesterday, so it got the world buzzing. They would be fools to get rid of that, but I mean, I don't know. Like, depends on where the San Antonio Spurs are actually seeing their future here. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if I would be surprised if they actually did end up trading him, being that he is a consideration for most improved player, all-star, etc.
Number 11, the Knicks. They want to trade out of the pick, I have heard.
That's a squad that probably needs to move up. I just don't know that they have the capital to do it.
They said that they don't want it. The rumors are, and I'm listening to Jonathan Gavoni and some other people here.
Yeah.
The rumors, they don't want to trade up. They want to trade out and get a actual player, some sort of veteran for that trade. If they stay there, AJ Griffin from Duke is their target.
He has ties to Leon Rose at CAA, right?
Yeah. The Thunder at 12. I've heard that they want to move up in the draft. They want to get to around pick 6 or 7, so they have another player targeted after potentially Chet Holmgren. The Hornets at 13. They're not trading 13. They want to trade 15 really badly for a veteran player, and then the Cavs at 14 look like they're going to stay in place. So that's what I've heard thus far on the trade market. Does any of that stand out to you at all?
Knicks trading back, if they're really eyeing AJ Griffin. The Hornets, I don't really know what they're to gain by a veteran. Like, I don't know what veterans out there that would improve their chances of being a playoff contender. The Thunder makes sense for them to want to move up, and they certainly have the assets to do so. Actually, that would probably be the best candidate for the Sacramento Kings, to be honest, because they could stockpile a bunch of future picks for next year's draft, which would probably be a good idea considering, well, I don't know. Maybe they think that they're in a win now mode with Sabonis, but I don't see how they could possibly ever think that they're actually going to be a contending team next season. But what was the other team that you mentioned there? You said the Pacers also.
Knicks, Thunder, Hornets, Pacers, Kings were the teams that I had targeted for potential trades here.
Okay. Yeah, so I'd say probably the most likely would probably be the Thunder to mortgage some of those future assets that they have to move up to grab another player in the top 10.
Yeah, so here's the other question. If the Thunder are going to move up, let's assume that they get Chet. Where do you think that they're targeting, or what player do you think they're targeting? Because obviously Ivy is a rumor at 2. I don't know if they could get to 4. I mean, they could get to 4. It's just a matter of how much and if the Kings want to deal with the Thunder. Sure. Does SGA, Giddey, and Ivy make sense together, given how good Giddey is with the ball and passing the ball, and then you also have SGA who needs the ball in his hands?
Yeah, I was actually kind of curious about Shaedon Sharpe around there. I had a mock to the Pacers right now, but at 6'6" and his freakish athleticism, I'm all in on the young dude. Like, I feel like he would be a great piece because they need, I feel like they need another scorer besides SGA. Like, Giddey is solid, but he's more of a distributor, right? So
yeah,
Sharpe can easily play the 3. And Lou Dort is still there, but I don't know. I feel like Lou Dort is solid, but I still feel like they still need a spark. And maybe he could come off the bench initially in the second unit and eventually earn more minutes to become a starter because he's super young. He's only 19 years old. But, this is the type of franchise-altering maneuvers you make. You invest in young guys that have a lot of athleticism and upside, played in a strong program like Kentucky, had a ton of talent around him and probably could have showed out if he went to another school. But, when you're playing in Calipari, you're playing with all, 5-star recruits mostly. So I think that would actually be an ideal landing spot if they wanted to grab him as that second, probably a bench scorer, but eventually could transform into an eventual starter at the 3 or 4, at the 2 or the 3.
All right, let's move over to the fifth pick real quick, and then we'll get to some other bets that we've made. So fifth pick belongs to the Detroit Pistons. I think that if the Kings somehow pass on Jaden Ivey, I would have to assume that Detroit would scoop him up really quickly. It seems like he'd be a great fit with Cade. Yep. If Ivey goes 4, so Keegan Murray plus 130, Jaden Ivey plus 175, Benedict Mathurin plus 175 here. I think that Mathurin would be an awesome fit next to Cade at plus 175. That's kind of where I'm looking right now. So if there's any indication that Ivy is going to end up going 4th here, I think that what I want to bet is Mathurin, 5th pick, plus 175, and then take Keegan Murray over 5.5 on his draft position, which is plus 190 at BetMGM and at DraftKings right now.
Crushing it right now because I had Mathurin. That was one of my best bets was him.
Boom.
At 5 plus 230 on FanDuel. They just need a shooting guard. They had Josh Jackson last year. They drafted Killian Hayes a couple years ago. He has not panned out, despite his size, to be a legitimate shooting guard or a point guard. That's why they got Cade Cunningham last year. 6'8", he is the de facto point guard. What do you need right there? You need a shooting guard. And, he's Pac-12 Player of the Year, 17 points, 6 rebounds, almost 3 assists. This guy's been moving up draft boards, and I think that this is the right fit for the Pistons. And, the Pistons also could be a team that might surprise and trade and be active on this NBA draft because Jeremy Grant's contract is still kind of lingering there. He was on the block late last season, didn't get moved, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did because they need to open up more time for Beef Stew and Isaiah Stewart. They did pay Kelly Olynyk a significant bag. They could also trade him, who's another guy that I think would be very appealing for contending playoff teams. They have some solid options here. So I think Detroit, wise, if they're going to keep the pick, take Mathurin. If you move it, I think you got a couple of options here of moving some really, really solid players on decent deals that could actually be pretty fruitful for you if you're trying to rebuild and stack up some chips and assets.
All right. So we think Jabari 1, Chet 2, Paolo 3. We think that Ivy will go 4 either to the Kings or via trade.
Or via trade,
Mathurin 5, and that probably leaves us with Keegan Murray going 6 to the Pacers. However, there are a couple other guys there that could be interesting. You talked about Shaedon Sharpe. We talked about Dyson Daniels. Those odds, I do not have the 6th pick odds in front of me right now, but that may be another interesting angle. Why don't we transfer over to some of your other bets that you have pinned right now that you're looking to make?
Yeah, I think my best bet is Jalen Duren over 10.5. It's just a minus 138, but I just don't see a place in the top 11 selections that a big man of his caliber would go. He's more of a traditional big, like a back to the basket guy, which honestly they're just fading out of the league at this point. And so like 10.5 just seems a little bit rich for the top 10. So like to me, the only opportunity that I see is Portland. And that's depending on whether they want to pay Yusuf Nurkic or not. And given the way that the Portland Trailblazers look right now, they have a coach in Chauncey Billups. Damian Lillard has committed yet again. He was injured last season, so consider that anomaly. Anthony Simons really showed out and showed what he could do on the basketball court. And they have a stockpile of wings. So I think if he's going to land somewhere, it would probably be with Portland. I just got to think that at this point, you can't invest in a traditional big that high in the draft. Now, Duren certainly has a solid skill set, very physical. I've seen comps compared to like a poor man's Dwight Howard, defensively for what he can do. Didn't really get to show out that much in Memphis, but I think he'll be a good pick, but I just don't like him going anywhere before the first 10 picks. I just don't see the upside outside of anywhere other than Portland.
All right. I like that one angle. I think that would make a lot of sense. And I do think that he's in contention to be taken by the Knicks at 11. So
yeah, especially because they have to decide what they want to do with Mitchell Robinson, who's eligible for a new contract. I think he could certainly fit there if they want to get a more solidified big to kind of protect the paint there.
All right. Let's see. The next bet that I have on here. So we talked about Jabari 1, Chet 2, Powell 3. I bet all those. Benedict Mathurin and Jaden Ivey at 5th. I bet those. Oh, here we go. Jeremy Sochan under Sohan, whatever the hell his name is, the guy from Baylor with that tried to get into every fight versus UNC in the comeback game in the second round of the NCAA tournament. Under 12.5, minus 175. I think there's a chance that he gets taken at 8, 9, 10, 11, or 12. I think he's in play all the way up to number 8. So I love this minus 175. I think it should be minus 250 on the under 12.5 for Sohan.
What do you think? You touched on it a little bit, but what do you think of AJ Griffin under 11.5, possibly to the Knicks there with that CAA connection?
Dicey.
That's
it
that
has
plus
to be
money. It's that plus money still. So I'm like, I'm intrigued.
All right, so let's go through it. So we're through the Pacers pretty much with they're either going to go Sharp, Daniels, or Murray, or Mathurin probably. So he's off the board there. Blazers probably aren't going to take him. Pelicans doesn't seem like he'd be a nice fit for them. No. Spurs are definitely not taking AJ Griffin. That's for sure.
Why don't you like the Pelicans? Why don't you like the Pelicans at 8?
I think that the Pelicans are going to go more defense than offense. With Zion coming back, Ingram there, I think that they're going to end up. That's why I kind of like the Sohan move there, or someone with some more defensive abilities. They need someone that can be like their. I hate to use it because he's such a unicorn, but like the Draymond Green, the guy that can facilitate offensively and play, positionless defensively. I think that's the type of guy that really glues that entire team together. I don't think that they need another wing scorer. It doesn't really make sense to me.
Right.
Spurs aren't taking him. Wizards, maybe. Wizards are always a wild card. I have no idea what they're going to do. They would be
they just stockpiled all of their small forwards too, because they got Denny Avita, they got Rui Hachimura, they drafted Cody or what's his name, Kispert last year. So was it Cody Kispert? I think is his name.
Yeah.
Kispert. they don't need another 3.
Okay, so then you're at Knicks. That's 11. So it's basically, do you think the Knicks will take him? And why would I bet the under plus money there when I could just go and bet the Knicks who they're going to take with the first pick? So
Better value, right?
I actually might have this right here. Give me a second. I think I saw it, the Knicks first pick. Here we go. AJ Griffin plus 600. He is the favorite, but why wouldn't I just go bet that plus 600?
Yeah, bet that.
For the Knicks
way better value. Right, exactly.
Yeah, so I'd rather take the sprinkle on that than even if I'm getting, what is it, under 11.5 plus 110 plus 120?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd rather just take the plus 600 on the Knicks and do it that way. And now that you're talking about it, I might have to do that. But that would be the bet.
I'm definitely sprinkling that now. That's definitely the one. What book do you find that at?
I'm not allowed to say. No, it might be a
it's
little
out there.
Offshore. A little offshore. Yeah. I'm sure it's available at somewhere probably around that number.
Yeah.
All right, another one that I have on the board that we'll flip back to you. So I talked about the Keegan Murray over 5.5 plus 165. I've seen that as high as plus 190. I like that one a lot based on what we talked about in terms of the order in the top 5. Agbaji from Kansas over 13.5 minus 140. He's a guy that I think is very likely to end up at either 14 with the Cavs or 15 with the Hornets. He makes sense there, but he doesn't really make sense to me before that point. And he's the type of guy who I could see slipping in here. He's a 3-and-D guy, not much more, a little bit older. I would see him. I think he's going to fall out of the lottery or at least close to the end of it.
Yeah, I've actually been wondering where Agbaji is going to go because, even though he went on that tournament run, he's not that. I don't know. I feel like he's not the prototypical shooting guard right now that you would go as a lottery pick. What is his age? I feel like he's not. Was he 22?
I don't think he's super young. He had to have been on Kansas for 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah, he's 22. Yeah. So, yeah. At this point, you're going to paying for a 22-year-old at that stage. Like, I feel like you could take flyers on a kid that's like 20, 19, something like that with a little bit more upside and better intangibles. Now, he was a gamer, but he also played on a really good team. So I'd be curious to see. I haven't really read up too much on his workouts and how they've been going, but with his just looking at a couple of books, his over is juiced pretty heavily, almost to minus 200 at some places. So I think this is a guy that's definitely sliding down draft boards.
Do you have any other bets that you want to throw out there before we head out of here?
I'm looking at the top 10 market here.
I want to get your thoughts in the top 10.
Yeah, I want to get your thoughts on Ty Washington.
I don't think he's going in the top 10.
Definitely not going top 10. But
his over under right now is like 17.5. Let's see right here. So I've been using Gavoni and Sam Vicente from Athletic as kind of my baseline.
Yeah, Vicini, yeah.
Yeah, Vicini, sorry. They have him 22 to Memphis, and let's see, 19 to Minnesota, and I believe the market's 17.5 on him. So
yeah, looking at that over.
Yeah, definitely. Let me make sure that I'm getting this right. DraftKings has Ty at over 19.5 now, juiced a little bit towards the over. So it seems like, based on those two, that we're at 19, 22. See what your other guy had. 18 was Brandon. So probably a stay away from me then. 17.5, if you see that number anywhere, would definitely be an over. I saw that earlier this week, but obviously it seems like the market's at 19.5 right now.
And do you think there's any chance that Johnny Davis can sneak into the top 10?
Yeah, I do. I have Johnny Davis right now in my mock at number 9 to the Spurs, and I think there's a chance 10 to the Wizards also. Although, given the Wizards small forward thing, it depends if you think that Davis is a 2 or a 3. I'm not sure that it matters as much anymore, but I do think there's a chance that he goes 9 to the Spurs. Maybe he's a guy at 8 to the Pelicans, a little bit older, a little bit more experience. But I would guess that 9 to the Spurs is probably a decent landing spot for him. What's the odds on that right
now? So he's minus 200. I'm seeing on one book. Let me look at another one. So yeah, that's. I mean, he's the 4th shortest odds to be a top 10 pick. So
minus 200 might be interesting.
Yeah.
All right. The other bets that I have.
This draft is going to get really interesting into like after lottery 14 through 20 through 30. Almost like it's going to be so hard to project. Because I think most of these guys are really going to be like fringe bench roles early on, and then maybe they can carve out a role as the years progress. But like, I don't think that this is a very substantial draft class in terms of like hard hitting cornerstone franchise players. Which makes it always difficult to bet on, right? So I feel like the real value is like, all right, what happens in the first 3 that we've already talked about? Then we're gonna have a lot of fun through that 4 through I think 10 range, where there's going to be a lot. We'll see if teams will disappoint us, but I think it's going to be pretty interesting.
The other bets that I've made thus far: Jaden Hardy over 23.5. Andrew Nembhard from Gonzaga plus 300 to end up in the first round. Remember, there's only 28 picks in the first round this year, right? But I think that he end up in the first round. Jeremy Sohan to be drafted ahead of Mark Williams. So Sohan is 12.5. Mark Williams is 14.5, minus 300. Probably a little bit too spicy there, but I think Sohan's going to end up being a top 10 pick. That's it for me right now. Although, let's get this daily dozen on the board. Let's run through this really quickly before we head out of here. All right. Keegan Murray, draft position 5.5, over under.
Gonna go over.
I'm on the over 2, again, plus 190, plus 165 at different books. Go ahead and bet that now. Benedict Mathurin, draft position 6.5. We're both taking under here.
He is going number 5, under.
All right, so I think that's minus 250 at some places. Dyson Daniels, draft position 7.5. The 7th pick belongs to the Blazers. 8th is the Pelicans.
Ooh. Is this the man that slides? I'm going to go over.
All right. Let's see. His draft position right now, over under 7.5, over plus 140, under minus 170. So they think he's probably going to end up either at the Pacers or the Blazers.
Could be a Pacer.
Yeah. I'll follow the juice here and go the under. Shaedon Sharpe, draft position 7.5. His line right now is over under 7.5, over minus 195. So I'll lean towards the over here. Although I think there is a real chance that he ends up 6 to the Pacers.
Yeah, that's where I was aiming for that. I like the under there.
We talked about this. Your lock of the entire draft, over on Jalen Duren, draft position 10.5.
Get the hell out of there, over.
Johnny Davis, draft position 10.5. We talked about this. Minus 200 to be a top 10 pick in this draft. I'm going to take the under here. I think he goes 9 to the Spurs.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm going under.
All right. Osman Jang, draft position 11.5. I've seen a lot of rumors that if the Thunder stay there at 12, they would take him, but 11 is the Knicks. Doesn't seem like someone the Knicks would take. So it's more like, is this a Pelicans pick at 8? Is this a Spurs pick at 9? Maybe Wizards at 10? What are you thinking here?
Oh man, there's always a surprise that creeps up in there, man. I'm gonna take the under here and assume that one of those late back end top 10 teams will select him.
Under 11.5, minus 135 at DraftKings right now. AJ Griffin draft position 11.5. We talked about this a bunch. Just bet this. If you believe the under, bet the Knicks plus 600. I think that I'm going to end up on the over here, though.
Same. I'm going to bet the Knicks, but not the over under. So I'm going to take the over. I think he's going to slide a bit. Definitely has injury concerns.
Hold on. No, that didn't work. Sorry, I was trying to put together something magical in my head. It didn't work. So Stohan draft position 12.5. Obviously, I think this is my here. I'll put it on the board. This is my lock of the draft.
Hey,
under 12.5.
We locking it.
All right. Mark Williams draft position 14.5. That means lottery, Cavs at 14, Hornets at 15.
I'm gonna go over that.
Over 13.5 is his draft at DraftKings right now. Minus 210 though to be the over. So, and I think that the Cavs, there's no reason for the Cavs to draft Mark Williams, a big guy. So no. I think that 14 would probably end up being what I say. Agbaji is a good fit there. So
correct.
I'll take the over 14.5. Also, speaking of the devil. 14.5. So I bet this number at 13.5, which I think is
I was going to say
over.
13.5 seems like the right number for Agbaji. Yeah.
But now the number's 14.5. I'd probably take the under there. I really think he's going to end up in Cleveland.
I think the under makes sense. And I like the fit in Cleveland, just given how much that half court offense really struggled to generate buckets. And Karis LeVert will be back next year, and I think Sexton will also be returning unless he's on the block again. So they could still use a scoring punch. So I like a shooting guard going there. So yeah, I'm gonna take the under as well.
All right, last one for Daily Dozen tomorrow. Brandman, draft position 14.5. I haven't heard much about him at all. I'll take the over, but he would maybe somebody to be a surprise. Minus 170 to the over 14.5 right now.
I haven't heard much about him either, so I'm gonna take the over.
All right, that does it. We have gone through the entire NBA draft. We are excited to bet on it tomorrow. Follow us on social media at Dan Titus, at JasonGold24. I'm sure we will be tweeting out all of our picks. And you can head over to the Action Network. Go listen to Buckets. Go listen to all of Dan's stuff for more takes on the NBA in general as we head into free agency and the NBA draft as we head into tomorrow. Any last words for the people out there?
Yeah, when we talk about some season-long NFL props.
As soon as the NBA draft is over, baby, it's time. It's time. My projections are almost ready. I'm ready to start putting some season-long props on the line.
Hell yeah.
All right. Can't wait for that. Good luck with all of your bets tomorrow. And be sure to play Daily Dozen and Big Board Showdown with us up until tomorrow afternoon. See you guys there.